Tonight, the Southern Chiefs organization says its Grand Chief will be back in the new year.
Why isn't he here? Why is he not here to hear what the problems are?
Members of a First Nation in the Yukon have lost confidence in their chief and propose a motion to suspend him.
I think that the year is also really indicative of some really big steps that have been taken in the struggle for Indigenous peoples and rights.
And our Truth and Politics panel breaks down the year that was. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A Chiefs organization in Manitoba has announced a return date for its Grand Chief that has been on leave following a fight outside of a bar in Ottawa earlier this month. Jerry Daniels of the Southern Chiefs organization was sent to hospital following the altercation ahead of the Assembly of First Nations Assembly. Meanwhile, APTN News has obtained a letter Daniels has sent to SCO chiefs, staff, and others expressing how sorry he is. In an email on Thursday, SCO says Daniels has recently met with the SCO's Chiefs Executive Committee, CEO, and 2 knowledge keepers. The email says the Grand Chief will be returning from his leave on January 6th. In the letter from Daniels obtained by APTN, Daniels says, quote, "I will do better. The past few weeks have been a wake-up call, and I recognize the need for a change in my lifestyle. Just like anyone who faces the shame of having personal struggles laid bare, I wish I had been honest sooner about my challenges with alcohol." The letter goes on to say that Daniels knows an apology alone is not enough. He has committed to a treatment plan that includes traditional ceremony and an alcohol treatment program. Daniels thanks the Chiefs Executive Committee for supporting him with his trauma. He is proposing a restorative justice model to resolve the incident that occurred. Several members of Liard First Nation in the community of Watson Lake say they've had it with their chief. On Tuesday, members held a community meeting to discuss their concerns about their chief's leadership, or as some members would say, lack thereof. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
It's been a really rough term.
2 resolutions were proposed, a non-confidence motion and a motion to suspend Chief Stephen Charlie. Those in attendance in person and online voted in favor of the motions. Despite being invited, Charlie didn't show up.
Why isn't he here? Why is he not here to hear what the problems are?
In October, Liard's deputy chief and 4 other councillors wrote a letter to Chief Charlie saying they had lost confidence in his leadership. They accused him of failing to collaborate with council, unilateral decision-making, and workplace bullying, among other things. Most of Liard Council's members say the chief refuses to hold council meetings, leaving them in the dark.
The people are telling him that this is not right, and the way that he's leading is not right.
And the rest of the community is taking notice. 4 Liard First Nation women recently formed a collective, Dina Otnazan, to bring accountability to their elected leaders. The group, which spearheaded the community meeting, is also circulating a petition to suspend the chief. 170 signatures have been collected as of Wednesday.
And the more we spoke out, the more other people spoke out. They're still speaking out quietly, but they're there.
Liard's election code requires 50% plus 1 of its roughly 1,000 eligible voters to officially suspend the chief. But Dene Otnazan say many community members are behind them and they'll continue to collect signatures. They say if all goes to plan, a by-election will be held in the spring to elect a new chief.
We're hoping that with Council of the Whole kind of taking back the reins and having like the by-election eventually, things will start to be rescinded.
Chief Charlie said in a statement on social media the accusations against him are inaccurate and unfounded. He said those behind the movement to remove him don't have the authority to do so under the First Nations election code, and he intends to serve the rest of his term. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Thanks, Sarah. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ACERT, has ruled that RCMP officers acted properly in the violent 2020 takedown of Chief Alan Adam of the Athabasca Chippewan First Nation. Police arrested Chief Adam in March 2020 outside the Fort McMurray Casino. Dashcam footage shows Adam acting aggressively towards an RCMP officer before being thrown to the ground during the arrest for expired license plates. He suffered cuts and bruises to his face. ACERT's final report concluded that the officers involved were, quote, lawfully placed and acting properly in the execution of their duties. Adam was charged with assaulting a police officer. That charge was dropped in June 2020. A man who led Indigenous programming at multiple schools across Winnipeg has been charged with additional offenses related to child exploitation. In July 2024, the Winnipeg Police Service's Internet Child Exploitation Unit was told about child sexual abuse imagery on 37-year-old Matthew James Musso's cell phone. They later found videos of children and adults undressing at a Winnipeg pool. He was arrested on October 2nd. In November, he was charged with sexual assault and sexual exploitation. On Tuesday, Musso was charged with 5 more offenses, including voyeurism, possession or publication of child pornography, indecent exposure to a minor, luring a minor through telecommunication, and supplying liquor to a minor. He was previously an Indigenous way of life teacher with the Winnipeg School Division. None of the charges have been tested in court, and Winnipeg police say he is currently in custody. Homelessness or houselessness has become a major concern in Canada. In Medicine Hat, Alberta, a Cookham or grandmother is doing everything she can to help those who need it. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Geraldine Chick Stuber has been helping people for about 4 years. As someone who herself was houseless, she wanted to give something back.
And I'd go to Tim Hortons or wherever, 2, 3 in the morning on my travels. I'd come across someone that would need a blanket or something. So it just kind of, I'll just restock my blankets each time I run out. And it just kind of progressed from there. And then other people started hearing what I was doing, and then they wanted to help. And so we have like more and more people that are joining.
People like Ivana Hewitt. They have known each other for over a decade, working at this century-old hotel. Hewitt is a cook, and their group, Nistatapi Cookums, made up of diverse people who provide food on the weekends here, when other supports don't or can't do enough.
And the people that I help on the weekends, I help them, and they give back to me, and they don't even know they have, right? Like, they don't realize that, if I don't see one of them, I'll worry about them, and then when I see them, I'm so happy.
In addition to weekend meals, Nistatapi Cookums do much more.
It's a financial thing like covering rent, maybe needing meals, we'll give them food. They need clothes, we'll provide them those clothes or shoes or boots, because we have a really good community.
Last month, Geraldine spent 24 hours on the streets to raise awareness of the plight of people who are houseless. And she, Ivana, and her group have now gone even further.
Between her and I combining what our resources are together, she was actually able to open up these hotel rooms for them. And, she's now working in conjunction with housing, and we're able to get people off the street and into houses.
A Christmas gift for some people who need one. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Medicine Hat, Alberta.
According to a poll by the Angus Reid Institute, families in Saskatchewan are struggling. The study found 45% of respondents feel worse off this year, and 50% are having trouble feeding their families. The poll says with limited resources, housing insecurity has soared. The Saskatchewan NDP recognized the increased pressure on local organizations like food banks due to the rising cost of living. At a press conference, Shadow Housing Minister April Chiefcalf stated that wages are not keeping up with the true cost of living in Saskatchewan. She attributes Saskatchewan's high cost of living to soaring rent prices. Chief Calf called this unacceptable, stressing that action is needed to prevent residents from ending up on the streets.
We learned this month that in just a few short years, the number of people experiencing homelessness in Saskatchewan has tripled, reaching nearly 1,500 people, and in Regina it has nearly doubled. All while the Sask Party government lets approximately 3,000 provincial housing units collect dust. These units can generate income for the province through rent payments, but more importantly, can make a good home now for low-income families, seniors, and others who need it. There's no justification for this inaction.
After nearly a year without, Nunavut has a new senator. Nancy Karatek-Lindell was appointed on Thursday to replace Dennis Patterson, who retired a year ago. She played a key role in establishing Nunavut as a territory in 1999. Karatek-Lindell was elected to Parliament 2 years earlier in 1997, serving as an MP until 2008. For a time, she was also Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources and served as President of the Inuit Circumpolar Council of Canada from 2016 to 2018. And to Ottawa now, CTV News has confirmed that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will be shuffling his cabinet on Friday. The reconfiguration of the government's front bench comes amid mounting turmoil in the aftermath of the resignation of Chrystia Freeland. There is no word yet on how big the shuffle will be, but there are a number of vacancies to be filled following the resignation of several ministers who have either left their cabinet positions or signaled they are not seeking re-election. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc said today former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney will not be joining cabinet.
When the Prime Minister asked me to be the Finance Minister, he told me that I was going to be the Finance Minister in his government until the next election, that I was going to be the Finance Minister to present the next budget, and 2025 will be an election year. So that's the work that I'm doing. And again, I wasn't part of any conversations with Mr. Carney, but Mr. Carney isn't about to become Canada's Finance Minister in the short term. The Prime Minister asked me to start that work and to get ready for a budget in the spring.
As 2024 is set to come to a close, our Truth in Politics panel is looking back on the year that was. That's coming up after the break. Stick around. Welcome back. As the year 2024 winds down, our Truth in Politics panel is looking back on some of the big stories of the year that dominated headlines over the past 12 months. Joining us now are Winnipeg Free Press columnist Neegon Sinclair and Jennifer Lewitz with Pasqua Harbor Strategies. Jennifer, Neegon, thanks so much for being with us here on the last panel of 2024, and we're taking a bit of a look back. Neegon, we'll start with you. What sticks out in your mind as the big story from 2024?
I think that it's hard not to talk about some of the very tough stories, and this year has been really a year of disarray for the Métis National Council and the Assembly of First Nations, both in deep disarray. There are lots of conflict, can't seem to get things moving, particularly with the Métis National Council, which seems to be subverting their own constitution in order to try to run the organization. But I think that the year is also really indicative of some really big steps that have been taken in the struggle for Indigenous peoples and rights. So regardless of the fact that the major political organizations are in disarray, there have been some very big success stories. For instance, the Nishalat people, the First Nations, got a huge land settlement and their land rights recognized in Vancouver Island. And so it kind of indicates to you that regional politics are doing quite well, but national politics are doing terrible.
Jennifer, what are some of the things, a top story for you that sticks out from 2024?
I don't know if I have a specific top story, but I echo what Neegon had said about the regional politics, because I feel like, I don't know if Bill C-92 and the child welfare law really was a turning point for our nations across the country, but it plays into how people, especially grassroots First Nations, are viewing organizations and lobbying bodies like the AFN and the Métis National Council, where as they start to feel more comfortable asserting their sovereignty and figuring out what that actually means to be sovereign and to advance self-determination, it feels like that disconnect is growing wider and wider between the grassroots and these national organizations. And I think it's really pointing out that they don't always speak in the best interests of the nations or the leadership or the members on the nations and what they actually want to see. So I think 2025 is going to be a very, very big turning point for how people view, the AFN and the Métis National Council, especially because we've already seen various different Métis Nation overhead bodies leave the Métis National Council, because now that they know that that's something that they can do to further advance their sovereignty, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that.
Neegon, aside from the things that we've talked about, other things come to mind as being a pretty big story this year?
Yeah, I think that what's to look for is this year was a tipping point, and I think it has a lot to do with Bill C-15. Bill C-15, for people to remember, it's the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Canadian law must come into harmony with Indigenous rights. That's been done provincially in BC and probably going to be done in Manitoba this year sometime, this upcoming year. What's happened is that there's a real tipping point in the politics. And what you're seeing is really big, almost unfathomable court cases that are now being brought, and they're involving billions and billions of dollars. So, for example, the Robinson-Huron treaty annuity case, the cows, this famous cows and plows cases that are outstanding treaty obligations that Canada owes to First Nations. But, in downtown Winnipeg, you see the three Dakota nations on the western part of the province who have always inhabited, but were traditionally in Winnipeg, now suing the city of Winnipeg and the Forks National Historical Site to get the center of the city. And I think that this year was a massive tipping point in the issue of Indigenous rights, historically used occupancy of lands. And I think that's what's going to happen in the year 2025 is more and more court trials, claims that perhaps we've never seen before. And so what we saw in BC with the Nishalat people will happen throughout the country in the forthcoming years.
Jen, aside from legal matters, national organizations in disarray, child welfare, anything else stick out for you from 2024?
I think what we're seeing right now with the federal government, I think we're seeing right in front of us the essential downfall of the Liberal government. We're going to be seeing an election at some point in 2025, whether that be we see a parliament right in the start of 2025. We've heard Jagmeet Singh say that they're potentially going to pull confidence after February. It's just, there's really a lot up in the air right now on when that's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And Nigon's right. There's a lot of big issues at the forefront right now. And whoever the incoming government is going to need to essentially deal with that. There's been a lot of litigation. There's been a lot of massive court settlements. And right now we're hearing about all of the backlogs for Jordan's principal claims. So if we have an incoming Conservative government, are they prepared to deal with that? Because as more and more of these claims come forward, we're hearing, the Trudeau government spent incredible amounts of money on fighting First Nations in court. Well, that might just increase because the federal government is going to need to pick a side on whether or not they actually believe in reconciliation or whether or not they want to sit in court and fight over essentially what is owed to First Nations. So I think that that's going to be one of the biggest things that we see next year that is trickling down from what we're currently seeing right now in 2024.
Of course, we're going to continue the conversation, including some crystal balling over on the podcast, but we'll leave it there for this week. Thanks to you both. Enjoy a couple weeks off.
Thanks.
The final episode of Nation to Nation is airing tonight, right after the news, and it is a stacked lineup. We'll have a preview for you after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Some freshly fallen snow was not enough for Ellis Cowley to not spot these two deer. Taking a break. Thanks for sharing with us, Ellis. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, you can send your photos to share@aptn.ca to be featured here as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, -2 in Halifax, 5 below in Fredericton, 16 below in Kuujjuaq and Nain, -8 with snow in Montreal, cloudy and 13 below in Val-d'Or. -5 with flurries in Sault Ste. Marie, 8 below and snow in Ottawa. -12 with flurries in Wawa, sunny and 13 below in Thunder Bay. -20 in God's Lake and Norway House, 18 below in the Paw. -18 for Winnipeg, 15 below in Dauphin. -11 and snow in Regina and Estevan, 12 below in Saskatoon. -24 in Stony Rapids, 16 below with snow in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, -19 in High Level, 16 below in Fort Chipewyan. Snow and -8 in Edmonton, showers and 9 above in Lethbridge. Rain and +12 in Vancouver, 11 with showers in Victoria. -4 in Prince George, snow and -3 in Smithers. -34 in Old Crow, 15 below in Whitehorse. Snow and -18 in Yellowknife, 34 below in Wrigley. -18 in Sax Harbor, 30 below in Fort McPherson. -26 in Chesterfield, -23 in Baker Lake. 24 below in Resolute, 27 below in Igloolik. Over to our Ottawa studio now, where Fraser Needham is standing by with a look at tonight's Nation to Nation.
Coming up tonight after the news, it's been a brutal week for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau after the bombshell resignation of Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. Cheryl Casimir of the First Nations Summit is here to tell us where the Liberal government might go next. The Métis National Council is also in disarray, and Hill Times columnist Rose LeMay shares her insights on the situation. The federal government says it will not be moving forward on Bill C-53. We get reaction from the president of the Métis Nation of Alberta on that decision. All this ahead on Nation to Nation.
Looks like a great show, the final episode of the year, and you can catch it right here in less than 90 seconds from now. We're all out of time for your APTN National News for this Thursday. You can find much more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, and I will see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the day's news. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Have a great night.
Good?